Welcome to The Point. And we have a very exciting evening for you tonight. We have the lovely Dr. Laura Richardson with us tonight, and she's going to be talking about, here we are, hello Dr. Laura.
Hello Dr. Richards.
And Laura's going to be telling us how to prevent the top 3 causes of death in the UK. So Laura, over to you. How are we going to prevent the top 3 causes of death in the UK?
Well, I don't think we've got enough time, Richard, to talk about them all, so I'm really going to home in on one of them. But first of all, I'd like to start with just some encouraging statistics, because back in the 19th century, the major cause of death then was just infectious diseases because of poor sanitation, and I'm talking about the UK specifically. Poor sanitation, so infections used to spread literally like wildfire and kill lots and lots of people, and particularly infants died of that. But with better sanitation, hygiene standards, housing, etc., and of course vaccines as well, this has been quite dramatically reduced. So that's the good news, is that we're no longer seeing high rates of death due to infectious diseases. Forward wind to 2001, and I just want to quote some statistics from then. The 3 top causes of death, this is now a few years ago, Richard, were the top number 1 cause of death was ischemic heart disease, in other words, heart attacks. People died of heart attacks. The second one was strokes, otherwise known as cerebrovascular disease. And I remember in a previous episode we talked about blood clots, yes. And you basically said blood clots were actually responsible, for the top causes of death, and actually correctly so. Yeah. So ischemic heart disease, strokes, and the 3rd top cause of deaths in 2001 was actually influenza and pneumonia. And you'll see on the graph there the statistics for those 3 things. The top one, of course, is the heart disease cause of death, and the second one is stroke, and the 3rd one is influenza and pneumonia. But the good news, as you can also see from that graph, is that there's been an amazing reduction in the incidence of death causing heart disease. That's absolutely amazing. So now in 2015, we have a completely different picture. First of all, there's been a 50% decrease in deaths due to heart disease and strokes, and it's seen quite clearly from that diagram. And there's also lung cancer. If you look at the diagram there, you see that lung cancer was the 4th cause of death, and there's been a 30% decrease in that, primarily due to, of course, people not smoking so much. But sadly, and I'll be dealing with this in another program, there has been as much as a 60% to 100% increase. That's a doubling of the deaths due to Alzheimer's. And you can see that green line between 75 and 50. That is actually rising from 2001 to 2015. And that's because there's been a rise in deaths due to dementia and Alzheimer's. And in men, the rise is actually less than in women, so 60% in men and the double the rate in women. That's really tragic, and I would be devoting another To The Point programme just specifically talking about prevention of Alzheimer's disease. But let's just move on now to the second image. We've got the differences between the sexes, and what we can see here is that dementia is the highest cause of death in women, whereas it is heart disease still in men. And of course, in men, dementia is second place. And in women, heart disease and stroke follow. And in men, you've got lung cancer. So lung cancer is still prevalent, more in men than in women. It's much lower in women than in men. What I'm going to be concentrating today is actually cancer generally, not just lung cancer, because as you can see in the top 10, there are quite a few of them between numbers 3 to 10 that are actually due to cancer. So we've got lung cancer, we've got prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, leukemia and lymphomas, which are also cancers. And in the female-specific cancer, we've got breast cancer. Now, although these cancers have different ways they outwork, the fact is cancer, and the principles of treating cancer is what we're going to be of preventing cancer is what we're going to be talking about today. So what exactly is cancer? Cancer is the uncontrolled division and growth of cells to the point where they become invasive They take over organs, they invade organs, and they travel to other places, either through the lymphatic or through the blood system, or just by direct invasion of nearby structures. So primarily cancer is caused by uncontrolled cell growth, where the cells are just doing their own thing. I mean, if you think about normally in life, what happens is that we shed our skin, the red cells replicate and get renewed every 3 months. And in fact, our body, the whole body changes after 7 years. We're not the same person. Every cell in our body is new within a period of 7 years. And the number of cells vary, and the rapidity of cells vary. Hair grows quite quickly, as we know, nails go quite quickly. They replicate and change quite quickly. But these cells are all contained, the pattern of replication is all contained by a God-ordained DNA-controlled pathway where cells replicate in a controlled way. The breakdown of old cells are removed from our systems through all the organs, the liver, the kidneys, sweating, and those sorts of things. But the cancer cells somehow manage to fool the human body into allowing them to grow without being detected until they become life-threatening. And the reasons why cancer cells can do that is 2 reasons mainly, because A, they're not detected in time. So our immune system, which normally recognizes that, hang on, these cells are behaving differently, do not see that these cells are replicating until it's too late. But the other thing is that we have a poor immune system, but we also have lots of toxins, lots of things that are causing our bodies to behave uncontrollably. So how do we prevent cancer, and what are the risks involved in cancer? The most obvious thing is smoking. We all know that, and Richard, and that's why we found there's been such a decline in lung cancer. It's because of a decrease in smoking, and right up there, you see right up on the list, for most of the cancers, you'll find that smoking is implicated. And I have to say that there has been a drive by the government in some aspects to try to reduce and encourage people to give up smoking in terms of putting labels on cigarette packages and gory images of lung cancer, lungs and things like that. A lot still can be done, and of course we have designated areas for smoking now. The UK is basically a non-smoking public area. So if you go to a restaurant, you will find that there's probably a designated place for smokers, but generally the rest of the restaurant or public places will be smoke-free. And that's a very good thing, because in as much as I sympathize with people who are smokers, it is an addiction and it's so difficult to break. The fact is, I see in my practice every day people coming in because they're afraid they've got cancer. And a lot of them are smokers, and sometimes they are passive smokers. So a wife will come in saying, I don't smoke, but my husband smokes, or vice versa. And to be honest, the times when a wife comes in and she's got COPD, which is a chronic damage to the lung cells, the lung tissue, and I would have to say to her, listen, or him, as the case may be, does your partner know that their habit is killing you? Do they know that? And I'm to be quite honest, sometimes I would say, can you explain to them that this is actually causing you to die quickly, much quicker than you would do? And explain to them the need to actually tell their partner that it's killing. And sometimes they'll say, well, you talk to him, doctor, and they'll bring the doctor in, the spouse in to whatever. But I can't express strongly enough how important it is as a behavioral thing to stop smoking. So let's just go back to that slide about behavior and things. So dietary risks, besides smoking, dietary risks are absolutely top. Now we talk about smoking, diet, physical activity and other things like drugs, etc. But those are the 4 top things that will be implicated in smoking. So let's talk about diet, because that is such an important part, Richard. There is an acronym called, and I've added it's called G-BUMS, miss.
Wow.
Excuse me. It's called G-BUMS, miss. And what does that stand for? Well, G stands for dietary intake of greens. G for greens.
Right.
The more greens people have in their diet, the more likely or the less likely for them for their cells not to be able to work in the fashion that they would be. So greens, what sort of greens? We're talking about green vegetables, we're talking about things like kale and spinach and broccoli, and they can all be eaten raw or steamed or partially cooked. Greens provide a high level of antioxidants. They provide things like vitamin C, which helps to provide the immune system with cancer fighting properties. So immune system needs to be built up, and one of the ways to do it is by eating greens. So add greens to your diet. Lots and lots of greens. You can have them as salads. You can juice them if you like. Just bung them all in a juicer and extract the juice so you have a high concentration of these antioxidants. Because cancer, wonderful. There's a diagram for you. Because cancer is caused by poor immunity and also poor diet and lifestyle. What stands for B? So we've got G-bombs. B, we're talking about beans and legumes. So we have things like broad beans, black beans, lentils are also very high. They've got lots of polyphenols, what they call polyphenols in them, which are very high, again, in antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. So G-bombs, G for greens, B for beans, O for onions and the allium group of families. And you can see on that diagram, you've got your garlic and your onions and your leeks, and they all belong to the same group of family, the allium group. They're high in a compound called sulforaphane. They're high in sulfur. Broccoli as well is very high in sulforaphane, and they are potent antioxidants and are very useful for prevention of cancer. Again, these are all documented. They're scientifically shown. It's not just Dr. Laura saying these things. So G-bombs, we've got the greens, we've got the beans, we've got the onions and the allium foods, so the garlics and the onions, etc. M stands for mushrooms. Oh. Mushrooms are being found, again, whether it's the shiitake mushrooms, even just the ordinary old British button mushrooms are actually being shown again to help with prevention of cancer. A variety of foods, and it's important that we do have a variety because they all have different components in them. So G-bombs, we got the greens, we got the beans, we got the onions and allium, we got the mushrooms. The next B stands for berries, and we've got some berries on there. We've got the blueberries, we've got the blackberries, blueberries are very high in particular. We've got the raspberries, we've got the strawberries as well. They all are very high in antioxidants. They're high in things called anthocyanins as well as vitamin C. They're high in fiber, so they help food to get through the gut very quickly. And again, these berries are very, very good. And out of season, you can get fresh berries. You can have fresh berries in season when they're cheaper, and out of season, you can have frozen berries. So stick a berry or two in your oatmeal breakfast in the morning, or bung them all together and just eat them, or put them all in a blender and make a smoothie and have your high dose of antioxidants every day. So we've got G-bombs. S, we got seeds and nuts. So what we got things like linseeds, otherwise known as flax seeds. We got things like nuts, healthy nuts like walnuts and almonds. And you know what's interesting, Richard, is that people are probably saying, hang on, that sounds like the Mediterranean diet, Dr. Laura. Well, actually it is. You're thinking, well, why are you telling us about the Mediterranean diet for cancer prevention? Well, actually, the Mediterranean diet has been shown to be actually the top diet for not just cancer, but for things like heart disease, stroke prevention, weight loss, longevity, good skin, and everything else. So most of these components are part of the Mediterranean diet, and I would really encourage you to have as much of them in your diet as possible. So we got G-bombs, Ms. So the Ms was actually my doing. I'm the one who came up with the Ms. And what I've done is I've put it down as miscellaneous. And the reason for that is very difficult to categorize all of them. And the things that I'm talking about, things like herbs. We noticed on the diagram you had some turmeric there, that yellow curcumin powder. Turmeric, ginger are very, very high in antioxidants, which do help actually to prevent inflammation and oxidation, and therefore prevention of cancer. So the other things in miscellaneous, other herbs, so we've got turmeric, we've got ginger, we've got things like basil, rosemary, thyme, parsley, chili peppers, very important, cinnamon, also very important, parsley I've mentioned before. Then we've got the healthy sweets. And what I mean by that is things like dark chocolate. Amazing, so anything over 70% is really good for you. Unsweetened fruit, so fruit that hasn't been, dried fruit I'm talking about, so fruit that hasn't been, you know, sometimes they add sulfites and nitrites to preserve them, but try to get dried fruit that have got no preservatives in them. So things like figs, dates, land flowing with milk and honey. It's thought that actually the honey that God promised them was actually date honey rather than the honey that bees produced. And dates are very, very good. Dry dates, you can have them much easier to get dry dates and fresh dates, especially this part of the world. So having unsweetened foods like dark chocolate and dried fruits, things like dates and figs and prunes are also very good. Included in miscellaneous are the healthy fats. All our cells, Richard, are made up of a cell membrane which needs fat to protect, to stabilize the membrane. And we need healthy fats to help us to do that. And rather than going to what we shouldn't have, I'm really concentrating on what we should have. And of course, by virtue of that, you know, if you are having an 80% healthy diet, then Richard, it's quite all right to have the occasional 20% whatever. But if our main diets are based on going back to Genesis 1:29, where God said, I'm just going to read that to you. It says here, and because that's God's blueprint, where are we? Genesis 1:29, it says, and God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the land, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. That was God's original blueprint. And we know after a while he did say adding some meat. But he didn't change his blueprint. He didn't say, now you're going to have lots and lots of meat and ignore the fruits and the vegetables. The principle that he still implored was that we should have mainly a plant-based, rich diet, which is nutrition dense, which is full of antioxidants, which is full of anti-inflammation foods. And the healthy oils actually serve an amazing purpose, because in another program, I'll be talking about Alzheimer's and how you prevent Alzheimer's. And one of the most important nutrients for the brain is 70% actually fat. So we need to feed our brains with healthy fats. And the sort of healthy fats that we're thinking about are the avocados. They're delicious. Avocados. Pop it in your salad, spread it around, you know, and it's actually good to have avocados on a regular basis. Things like coconut oil, very healthy fat. Olive oil, very healthy fats. These are things that we should try to incorporate into a diet every day, because they not only help with cancer prevention, but they also help with things like Alzheimer's prevention as well. So the Mediterranean diet. So G-bombs-ness. G-bombs-ness. So we've talked about the greens, we've talked about the beans, we've talked about the onions and allium, we talked about mushrooms, berries, talked about seeds and nuts, we talked about miscellaneous, we talked about the herbs and the spices that we can add to our diet. Talked about unsweetened fruit as well. And then the MS, the S for MS, stands for supplements. A lot of people don't believe in taking supplements, Richard, and I have to say that I do take supplements. In fact, I recently had a routine health check as a female, and they wanted to know what my diet was like. So they said, okay, so what do you have? What supplements do you take? So I said, okay, I take vitamin D, vitamin C, selenium, zinc. Because she thought, oh, I'd probably say, oh, I take a multivitamin. And then you said, oh, wait for me. I went on coenzyme Q10. In fact, actually, I don't know whether Howard would want people to know about this or not, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Howard, sue me for breaking confidentiality. But, you know, just today we were talking about Howard being full of energy. You know, I mean, Luke's his son is producing, directing the program, and we're talking about, you know, Luke said, Dad got up at this, he's going to play football, he's going to do that. And I said to him, Howard takes coenzyme Q10. I'm sure that's not the only thing that keeps Howard going, but I'm sure it does contribute actually to a well-being, and it's something that I would actually advise people to take, especially if you're taking statins as well, because statins do obviously, statins people have to take if lifestyle doesn't work to reduce cholesterol, but it's important that you do particularly take coenzyme Q10 if you're taking statins, because it depletes the resources of your coenzyme Q10, and as we know, that's important for the production of ATP in the mitochondria, which is also important for energy production. So coenzyme Q10 is a supplement that I would definitely advise people to take. Vitamin D, we live in a country where, unfortunately, the sun is scarce. You know, when it's hot, we all go out there and sunbathe. But however much we sunbathe in the sun, we just unlikely to be able to get enough vitamin D. Do you take any supplements, Richard?
Not very many.
You don't? Well, I bet you take vitamin D, though. You do take vitamin D. Well, the thing is, vitamin D is one of those that, again, has a direct effect not only on well-being, but it has a direct effect on the immunity, on the immune system. It helps to provide, again, the immunity with the nutrients it needs to be able to build the building blocks for the immune system. And of course, as we know, the immune system is responsible for detecting rogue cells like cancer cells. So vitamin D is important, CoQ10, vitamin C definitely, also vitamin E and vitamin and selenium as well are also very important, again, to help to boost the immune system and therefore provide nutrients to help to boost the immune system to prevent cancer. Just going back to that slide, if possible, regarding the dietary, the lifestyle, stress is something that I would like to just to home in on a little bit. With the little time we've got left, stress is so important. We talked about smoking. Stress can literally be a killer. As a GP on a regular basis, and I'm sure when you were practicing as well, Richard, the number of people who come into the surgery with stress-related problems, whether it's marital, child, work, you know, or just stress from caring for elderly parents or financial difficulties. All these stresses, God has not designed our bodies to deal with our stress. We're meant to relieve our stress. Actually, as Jesus says, come unto me, all those who are heavy laden, and I will give you, yes, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. He says, I'll give you a good yoke. You can take this yoke off, this burden, be heavy, this heavy laden burden you've got. You take it off. And I think it's so important that what the toxins that we feel our lives with, emotional toxins, can actually lead us to a place where our body's out of balance and can actually, in some cases, lead to cancer as well. So toxins within and without. The toxins without, things that we probably haven't had time to talk about, but things like pesticides, pollution. If you live in the city, surround yourself with greenery, because the carbon dioxide is taken in and pollution taken by the plants, and they spew out oxygen instead. So if you live in, even if you live in a flat and you don't have a garden, surround yourself with plants, because they are very, very healthy. And in fact, when I was traveling to the studio today, I suddenly noticed, hang on, the M25 is surrounded by greenery. That's amazing. That's almost God's way of helping us to make sure that we don't asphyxiate as we're driving on the M25, because it's so full of green. We've got green, and that's what God has created the plants for, to help to mop up our pollution and to give us oxygen instead. So try to minimize the toxins in your life. Filtered water, it doesn't cost too much to have filtered water in your house, and I believe you've got
yes,
some filtered water.
We do, absolutely.
You do. That's a very good thing to have. So internal toxins like stress, anxiety, prayer, meditating on the Word of God. As I said, there really isn't too much time. I wish I had longer, but de-stress yourself as much as possible. Physical de-stressing, exercise is actually a good stress reliever. Sweating, because the skin is such a good detoxifier. You know, giving yourself actually sweating, going to a sauna, soaking in an Epsom, a Dead Sea bath. That actually helps to detoxify the body, because the stuff comes out. So a Dead Sea or Epsom salt bath is a good way of just relaxing at the end of the day. So toxins that you take, organic food if you can. You know, we're encouraging you to eat lots of fruits and vegetables, but quite a lot of the time most of the time, if they're not organic, they're sprayed with pesticides. So it's very important that you try as much as possible to eat organic if you can. That's outside the budget for a lot of people. And in that case, use a very good pesticide remover. You can make a homemade pesticide remover with a little bit of apple cider vinegar, a bit of bicarbonate, a bit of soap and salt, and just pop them in together, leave them there for 30 minutes, and then rinse them off. That will strip the foods of a lot of the pesticides. Make sure you rinse them properly and eat them. So as much as you can, try to limit the toxins you're taking in. Other things to consider are teas, things that you drink. Now, green tea is a favorite of mine, and I can drink green tea to the dozen. Green tea is very good, high in polyphenols, very good as an antioxidant. So try to incorporate green tea into your diet. You don't have to have green tea hot. You can sort of, brew the tea and stick in the fridge and have some iced green tea during the summer. It doesn't have to be hot because it's still got the active ingredients in there and still very useful for you. How are we doing for time, Richard? I just want to make sure that
We're doing just fine.
We're doing fine.
2 minutes left.
Oh, 2 minutes. Okay, wow. Okay, time to wrap up. So, G-bombs, miss, don't forget all those foods to have incorporated to your diet. I've talked about exercise. Exercise relieves stress. De-stress yourself, make sure you pray, make sure you meditate on the Word of God, forgive easily, and make sure that you do not hold resentment. I see a lot of spouses, again, this is something I see very much in my practice, where one spouse has spoken negativity over the other spouse for years and years. They've been battered by the words and the attitudes of their spouse to the point where they're coming ill, because particularly in a relationship where the husband is the one that is speaking the negativity over his wife. He is the head of the home. And if all he's doing is bombarding his wife with criticism and negativity, it actually impacts on the woman's health. And I've seen, evidence of that. It may not be scientific, but I can tell you, the sympathetic nervous system being constantly on alert because, your spouse is going to say something negative to you is not good for the immune system. So make sure that you provide yourself an atmosphere where if your spouse is being negative, get some counseling, continue to forgive anyway, because forgiveness is so key. Say no to toxic relationships. Think people who only come to take and not to give. There are times when you have to say I'm not going to answer the phone call for that friend because every time they call, all they're doing is dumping on me. I can't do that. I can't be doing. I need to be fed. I need to be revived myself. So we may need to limit the amount of contact we have with certain people because all they do are just build up the toxic emotional stress in our lives. So eat organic as much as you can.
Seconds.
Time to go, is it?
Time to go.
I knew there wouldn't be enough time.
We're going to have to carry this on, Laura. Thank you for joining us on To The Point. That was absolutely fantastic. Do write to Laura and thank her so much at tothepoint@revelationtv.com. And thank you for company and join us next week, 8:30 every Monday evening. And thank you for joining us and we'll see you again next week.